The stadium was alive with energy, the roar of families, the flash of cameras, the echoing call of names. Graduates walked the aisles in their crimson gowns, tassels swinging like pendulums, parents and friends cheering loudly from the seats above. I should have felt triumphant. A surge of relief after 6 grueling years of research, coding marathons, and living on little more than determination and caffeine. But my phone buzzed in my pocket, and all that warmth drained from me in a heartbeat. Don't expect help. You're on your own. Dad's text glowed on the screen, and it hit sharper than any disappointment I'd endured before. After years of late nights debugging algorithms, teaching labs, and working freelance coding gigs to make ends meet, this was the note he chose to send on the day I was supposed to celebrate. I stared at the dean calling names on stage, forcing my hands to remain still in my lap. Pretending everything was normal, I tried to focus on the ceremony. But the words gnawed at me. You're on your own. I am Chloe Hart, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the girl who questions herself endlessly. At least that's what Dad claims. Growing up in a quiet Californian town, ambition wasn't admired. It was whispered about warily, like a dangerous game you shouldn't dare to play. While other kids were at sleepovers or pep rallies, I buried myself in coding problems, research papers, and textbooks. To my parents, it looked like I was aimlessly wandering toward instability. They never understood the world I was building. I still remember trying to explain neural networks at Thanksgiving. Dad laughed, telling me I sounded like a machine. Mom waved her hand and told me to focus on something more practical, something normal. Each dismissal was minor in isolation, but accumulated over the years, they convinced me sharing my work at home was pointless, so I learned to keep things close. College was an uphill climb. I paid my own tuition through assistantships, grading hundreds of student assignments, teaching introductory labs, and taking on freelance programming jobs at night. Discipline became my constant companion. Comfort and leisure had to wait. I worked quietly, building a life that demanded total focus. When I began developing my own project, a company that had the potential to change the tech industry, I kept it hidden. Not out of shame, but because I had learned early on that no one in my family truly listened. Graduation day was supposed to feel different. I watched parents cheering, waving signs, crying as their children strode across the stage. Mothers fussed with tassels. Fathers shouted names, voices cracking with pride. I tried not to stare. I tried not to feel the familiar pinch in my chest. Jessica nudged me gently. You okay? You're looking somewhere else. I smiled faintly. I'm fine, just tired. But Dad's text was lodged under my ribs, a constant ache reminding me that I was supposedly on my own. It wasn't an accident. It never was. Dad believed life was a series of lessons, and apparently, even a PhD graduation was just another opportunity to remind me I wasn't enough. I sank lower in my seat among the sea of red gowns, pretending I belonged while feeling invisible. Then a subtle shift occurred. My phone buzzed again, barely audible beneath the din of the stadium. I assumed it was Jessica sending a meme to lighten the mood. Instead, the name flashing on the screen made my stomach tighten. David. My CFO. He wouldn't call unless it was urgent. I whispered into the phone. Hey. I'm in the middle of the ceremony. I'm so sorry, he whispered urgently. The IPO went live 20 minutes ago. We priced high. And Chloe, he exhaled, almost laughing. We hit 6 billion. I froze. 6 billion. The words felt surreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. Heat rushed up my neck. People around me started whispering. Jessica's eyes widened. Did he say billion? She whispered sharply. My pulse raced. David continued, oblivious to the crowd. We're trending on every financial site. Investors are pouring in. Chloe, we did it. You're the youngest tech billionaire in the country. It hit harder than the numbers themselves. For years, I'd hidden the company, keeping my nights, meetings, and painstaking coding sessions private. And now, in the middle of the one place my parents thought I was aimless, it all came spilling into the open. I whispered into the phone, David, people can hear you. It's too late, he replied cheerfully. His excitement carried through the stadium, and soon dozens of eyes were turning toward us. Parents stood, phones raised, capturing the spectacle. I could feel the air humming with disbelief. Jessica grabbed my arm. Everyone heard, she murmured. Everyone. And then I saw them, my parents, pushing through the rows toward me, expressions sharp, ready to scold, completely unaware of the storm about to hit them. Dad's text had been cruel. But what was happening now would shatter every assumption they'd held about me. I glanced down as my phone buzzed again, louder this time. Maria, our head of PR. I turned slightly so my parents wouldn't see the panic rising on my face. Chloe, she said briskly, listen. Major outlets are calling. Business Daily wants an interview tonight. Morning shows, too. Your name is everywhere. I exhaled shakily. Keep your voice down, I whispered. Unbelievable, Maria continued. Your valuation is climbing past $6 billion. This is historic. You need to approve statements. Multiple universities want partnerships. It's huge. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to process the collision of my two worlds, the quiet, hidden labor of the last several years and the sudden explosion of recognition in the public eye. My parents were stepping directly into the fallout of my work, oblivious to the impact of the moment. I forced out a whisper. Maria, I'll call you back. Lowering the phone, I realized that every eye in the stadium was now partially on us. Phones remained pointed in our direction. Some faces were smiling, excited to witness a story they would talk about for years. My parents were still approaching. Mom's expression was unsettled, scanning the crowd. Dad's face hardened, confusion and irritation warring across his features. Chloe, he barked, what's going on? Why are people looking at you like that? For the first time, I didn't shrink. He wasn't controlling the narrative anymore. The air around us buzzed with anticipation. Maybe we should talk later, I murmured. No, Dad shot back. Now. You storm off to get a PhD no one asked for, and now this? Jessica inhaled sharply. Mom shifted uncomfortably but didn't intervene. I realized, as always, the conversation would be mine to steer, or not. And just then my phone buzzed again. I looked down. Maria. Insistent, loud, impossible to ignore. I pressed speaker. Maria's voice exploded. Chloe! Your valuation jumped past $6.2 billion. Investors are pushing projections higher? Media want statements. You're officially one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. The stadium fell into a stunned hush. My parents' expressions shifted. Shock, disbelief, fear, and I felt the weight of every assumption I'd endured for years finally collide with reality. The crowd around me buzzed with whispers, eyes darting between my parents and me, some straining to catch a fragment of what had just been announced. Dad's brow furrowed, lips pressed tight, and Mom's hand clutched her purse with a grip so fierce her knuckles turned white. I felt a strange mix of life, calm and adrenaline, the kind that comes when years of invisible effort are suddenly illuminated in full glare. Chloe, what is happening? Dad demanded again, his voice sharp but tinged with disbelief. The irony stung. He had spent my entire life questioning every choice I made, doubting my capacity, and now the world was proving him wrong in a way he couldn't ignore. I stood taller, smoothing the front of my gown as if the fabric could anchor me to my own presence. Dad, this isn't just happening. I've been building this for years. You just didn't see it. He blinked, caught off guard by my calm. His usual strategy of intimidation, of rushing to lecture or undermine, faltered under the weight of reality. Mom's voice shook as she finally spoke. Chloe, we didn't know. We didn't realize. I know, I said quietly. And it's not because you couldn't understand. It's because you never asked. The words landed heavier than I anticipated. A ripple of murmurs passed through the surrounding crowd. Parents craned their necks. Graduates whispered to each other, snapping phones into recording mode. Cameras from the media crews near the stage angled toward us, capturing the tension in real time. It was like standing at the center of a storm, yet paradoxically, I felt a clarity I had never known before. I reached into my bag and pulled up the banking app on my phone. I scrolled through the entries, every anonymous transfer, every payment I had quietly sent home, every financial support I had provided over the past 4 years. I turned the phone toward my parents. This is me. All of this. I've been taking care of things quietly, while building something that actually matters. Mom's hand flew to her mouth and I saw Dad lean in, squinting at the screen as though the numbers themselves might explode. You've been sending these? He stammered. Yes, I said. And I didn't tell you because you always doubted I could take care of myself. I wanted you to see that I could take care of more than just myself. Their expressions shifted, the hard lines softening slightly under the pressure of truth. For once, there were no lectures, no scolding, just the weight of realization. Then my phone buzzed again. Maria. I hesitated, glancing at Dad and Mom, whose attention was fixed on me like I was some enigma they had never properly read. "Maria," I said, voice steady, "I'm on speaker." "Go ahead." "Chloe, the media is calling. Your valuation just jumped again, 6.2 billion and climbing. Multiple outlets want interviews immediately. Business Daily, Morning Tech Show, even universities are asking for partnerships. Everyone knows your story now." The quiet hum of shock around us amplified the words. Students whispered. Parents looked on in disbelief. Dad's face was pale, a mixture of incredulity and growing concern. Mom's eyes were glistening, mascara smudged at the edges. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of all the years settle into the moment. "Maria, thank you," I said. "But I'll call back in a few minutes." I ended the call and turned, fully toward my parents. Dad's voice broke the stillness again. "Chloe, I don't understand. How is this even possible? What exactly do you do?" It was the first time he asked the question that actually mattered, the one he had never asked before. Not the usual criticisms about stability or real jobs, but a real, curious question. I held his gaze firmly. "You texted me this morning saying I was on my own," I began. "But I haven't needed your help for a long time. I've been building this brick by brick while you doubted me." Confusion and pride warred across his face. Mom's trembling voice cut in. "Chloe, we didn't see any of this. We didn't ask. We should have asked." "I know," I replied. "Because you never did. But that doesn't mean I wasn't capable." A few graduates around us leaned in slightly, curiosity and awe lighting their faces. The entire stadium felt like it had shrunk around this small circle of revelation. I scrolled through a few more entries on my phone, contracts finalized, investor emails, and confirmations of donations I had quietly set up over the past years. "This is what I've been doing," I said. "Not because I wanted to show off, but because I wanted to create something that mattered. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this, and now the world knows too." Mom's shoulders sagged, and she finally let herself cry quietly. Dad leaned back, swallowing hard, eyes scanning my face as if seeing me for the first time. "Chloe, I thought I was helping you by preparing you for a stable life," he said, voice raw. "I didn't realize you were already standing on a foundation stronger than I ever had." I softened my tone. "I know, Dad, and I don't need your approval to succeed. I just wanted you to see me, really see me one day." For the first time, they looked like they were listening, not judging. Mom reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers nervously. The air, thick with anticipation, seemed to exhale slightly. The media cameras lingered, capturing the quiet power shift between parent and child. Then another buzz. Maria again. I ignored it, knowing the immediate attention was secondary to this moment with my parents. Dad, still processing, finally asked, almost in a whisper, "Chloe, so all of this, it's real?" "Yes," I said clearly. "I built this. I've been building this. And today it's worth billions." The realization hit them fully now. Mom's tears flowed freely. Dad's jaw loosened. They were not angry, not yet resentful, just stunned. Years of misunderstanding and doubt had collided with undeniable truth. And there was no denying it now. I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not revenge. Not triumph. Just clarity. The balance of power, the judgment that had always shadowed my life, was gone. I didn't need to prove myself in anger. I only needed to stand firm in truth. For a moment, the chaos around us, the cheering, the flashing cameras, the murmurs, faded into background noise. I was Chloe Hart, the quiet girl who had built something extraordinary. And for once, my parents could no longer ignore that reality. Security gently approached, guiding us toward a less crowded area. The crowd followed their eyes and cameras, but I no longer felt exposed. Every step felt deliberate. Every glance measured. This was my life, my achievement, my voice. As we moved, I realized the shift was not just about money, or recognition, or even media coverage. It was about respect, about being acknowledged for what I had built and endured, about finally standing as the person I had been quietly shaping for years. We reached a quieter corner of the stadium, shaded from the glaring sunlight and distant from the main crowd, but still carrying the hum of curiosity from the surrounding graduates and families. Security gave us space, allowing the press to continue their coverage without intruding directly. For the first time in years, I felt the tension ease, not because the storm outside had calmed, but because I had finally asserted my presence. Dad sat first, elbows on his knees, Hands clasped together, his eyes fixed on the ground. Mom hovered nearby, mascara running slightly, eyes red but attentive. Neither of them seemed ready to lecture, yet the air between us was thick with unspoken words. "Chloe?" Dad's voice was quiet, rough, almost vulnerable. "I owe you an apology. A real one." I met his eyes, surprised at the humility in his tone. He had spent years building walls of judgment and doubt, and now those walls were cracking. "Go on," I said softly. "I thought I was guiding you," he admitted. "Pushing you toward stability, teaching you responsibility. I didn't realize you had already created a foundation stronger than I ever had. You've built something I never even understood." Mom stepped closer, brushing a tear from her cheek. "We were wrong," she whispered. "About your work, about your strength, about everything." Their words didn't erase the years of misunderstanding, but for the first time I felt genuinely seen. I breathed in slowly, letting the tension in my shoulders ease. "I'm not angry," I said quietly. "I'm just tired. Tired of being treated like I didn't know what I was doing. I've been standing on my own for years. I just wanted you to see me." Dad's eyes softened. "We do now," he said slowly. "And we're proud of you. Not because of the money. God, not that. But because you didn't give up on yourself, even when we didn't understand." The words landed gently without grand gestures or exaggerated apologies. There were no promises of perfection, only acknowledgement and accountability. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to shrink or apologize for my ambition. The dynamic that had defined my life, where their judgment overshadowed, my confidence was shifting. I pulled out my phone again, showing them the latest updates. The IPO had surged to over 6.3 billion. Coverage across tech and financial news sites exploded, and investors were clamoring for more. But this time, I wasn't focused on the headlines. I was focused on them. "This is what I've been building," I said. Quietly, consistently, and today the world knows too. Mom reached out, touching my arm. "Chloe, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything now," I replied. "We'll talk in time." But I needed this moment to stand as myself, without hiding or shrinking even for a second. Dad nodded slowly, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "I see it now," he said. "I really do." It was a small, simple acknowledgement, but it carried immense power. Years of dismissals, of skepticism, of subtle undermining had been replaced by a quiet understanding. Not perfection, not instant approval, but recognition. And for the first time, I felt the validation I had spent my life seeking, not from the world, but from the people who had always doubted me most. The press eventually moved closer, cameras catching the trio of us, parents and child together in a moment of raw, unfiltered reality. A reporter stepped forward, microphone extended. "Chloe Hart, can you confirm the IPO numbers? Are you officially a billionaire?" I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. The answer was simple, but it carried years of effort and quiet resilience. "Yes," I said, voice clear and confident. "The company I founded reached a valuation of over 6 billion today. And yes, I am financially independent." Another reporter pressed further. "And your parents? How does it feel to see your success?" I glanced at Mom and Dad, their expressions softened, faces open and vulnerable. I could have said anything, played the drama, the triumph, but I chose honesty over spectacle. "They're here," I said. "We're still processing everything, but I know they care. And I know in time they'll understand the work I've done." The collective gasp from the surrounding graduates and families rippled through the area. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. And yet, my focus was fixed on the two people who had once doubted me most. Their expressions were changing, subtle shifts in understanding and pride emerging where skepticism had once lived. Mom finally let herself cry fully, quietly, unashamedly. Dad swallowed hard, voice thick with emotion. "Chloe, I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You don't have to say anything," I replied, voice calm. "We'll talk privately later. Right now, just know that I've built this life, and I've done it honestly, with integrity and with persistence. That's all I needed to show." The security team guided us toward a slightly more secluded area, away from the immediate press frenzy. The hum of the ceremony, the cheers, and the flashes of cameras faded to a manageable background noise. For the first time, I felt in control, not over the IPO, not over the media, but over my own story. I walked with my parents slowly, shoulder to shoulder, a quiet truce forming in the space between us. Not a perfect resolution, not a magical reconciliation, but a beginning. For the first time, I felt like I could stand fully in my own life without shrinking for anyone's expectations. As we stepped back into the sunlight, the ceremony still unfolding around us, I felt a profound sense of relief and clarity. It wasn't the IPO that defined me. It wasn't the recognition from the outside world that mattered most. What mattered was that I had finally taken up space as myself, unapologetically, in front of the two people whose approval I had spent years seeking. I realized then that success isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you are capable, that your vision is valid, and that your perseverance matters. My parents' pride, tentative and awkward as it might be, was a welcome addition, but it wasn't the foundation. The foundation had always been me. We walked together toward the exit, the noise of the stadium gradually falling behind us. Cameras still clicked, reporters shouted questions, and students whispered excitedly, but it felt distant. I had done what I needed to do. I had shown myself and my parents the reality of what I had accomplished. And in that moment, standing on my own, I understood the true meaning of independence. Not just financial, not just professional, but emotional. To be fully seen, fully recognized, and fully self-assured. This was the culmination of every late night, every quiet effort, every moment of doubt I had endured. Dad finally spoke again, voice softer, steadier. "Chloe, we're proud of you. Not because of what you've built, but because of who you are." Mom reached for my hand, her grip firm, warm. "We're sorry we didn't see it sooner, but we do now, and we'll try to understand every day." I smiled, a calm, genuine smile. "Thank you," I said. "That's all I ever needed." As we left the stadium, the chaos of the ceremony fading behind us, I realized that the world would continue to notice my achievements. The press would continue to report, and the IPO would continue to make headlines. But none of that mattered as much as the quiet, understanding I had finally earned from the people who mattered most. For the first time, I felt complete, not because of recognition or wealth, but because I had stood finally as myself. And that, more than anything, was worth everything.